What do you genuinely not understand? The process of thought, how we can make so many decisions in a split second. Internal dialogue is crazy. Does everyone have the same sort of inner thoughts? Do animals have internal dialogue? When I think about it, it blows my mind. Oh man, I had a fucking existential crisis recently, when I started thinking about how my thoughts just popped into my head and I actually have no control of what I think. Like I don't decide to think something, I just do. How the fuck do brains even work? Do I even have free will? Am I just a biological machine running calculations based on previous experience? Not to get too crazy, but man, this shit weirds me out whenever I think of it. Some people don't have an internal dialogue but think through visualizing words. There are also probably other ways too. I haven't researched it much, and some people can't visualize stuff. I can't visualize stuff. The lack of visualization is called aphantasia. How I spend hours making a perfectly curated list of shows I want to watch on Netflix, but when I actually have time to watch them, none of them sound appealing and I end up deleting most of the items off the list I spent hours making. Bitcoin, no matter how it's explained to me. How computers work. I'm a reasonably tech-savvy person, but I genuinely have no idea about the inner workings of the tools I use for 12 hours every day. It's like I'm like a professional driver who has no idea how an engine or a turbocharger or brakes work. Edit. For those interested in reading more about the magic boxes and don't want to delve deeper into the comments, here were the most frequent suggestions. Watch the Crash Course Computer Science on YouTube. Read the book Code, The Hidden Language of Computer Hardware and Software, http://nangame.com/some dude named Benita who builds magic boxes from scratch. Personal site, YT channel. I will probably only do number 3 cause I have the attention span of an ADHD-riddled goldfish. And because I'm not that interested in computers, I was mainly karma whoring. Thanks for the comments and the effort though, I'm sure many will find them really interesting. Basically lots of electrical signals turning little switches on and off. The electrical signals are called bits, and are represented by a 1 or a 0. A 1 basically means a wire is powered, and a 0 means it's not. Transistors are the switches. They take one input, and allow electricity to flow through depending on the value of the input. Some transistors allow power through when the input is powered, or 1, and some allow power through when the input is off, or 0. There's a lot more behind transistors, but that's pretty much the basics. Logic gates are made of a bunch of transistors connected together. Logic gates are the basic building block of components that compute things, like the processor. Logic gates take one or more input and produce one output. One example would be an AND gate, which takes two inputs, and if they are both 1s powered, it will output a 1 powered. If one or both inputs are turned off, the AND gate will output a 0 off. There are other logic gates like OR gates, which output a 1 if one or both inputs are 1s, or a NOT gate, which outputs the opposite of the input 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. The processor, or CPU's job is to execute the instructions provided to it. This could be something like take two numbers from the memory RAM, add them, and store them in a new spot in the RAM, or get a value from memory, and tell the motherboard to output the value out of the USB port. The instructions are really just a lot of 1s and 0s that turn on or off certain things in the processor. A computer has multiple places it can store things. The first and fastest is to store data in the CPU's cache, which is extremely fast, but also extremely small, and it resets when you restart. Cache is used to store some instructions or numbers the CPU is going to use for calculations. The RAM, which is the memory, is much larger than the cache, but a little bit slower. The computer stores all values for running programs and important numbers here. For example, playing a game, it would store your player's position and data here, for quick access for the CPU. This also resets on restart. The largest, and slowest method of storage is the disk. This is where all of your files live, and it keeps its data even when the computer restarts. Two types of disk storage are SSD or HDD, solid-state drive or hard disk drive. SSDs use transistor trickery to store data permanently with no moving parts, and HDDs do magnet stuff with a spinning disk and moving arm. The GPU, graphics processing unit, creates the output that you see on your screen. It does this using data sent to it from the CPU, and renders it, producing a video output. The CPU is very good at doing a few very hard tasks at once, while the GPU is made for doing thousands of tiny tasks at one time. The GPU is the most important part for gamers, as it is the part that processes the graphics in games. All computers have some type of GPU, either using one built into the CPU, or using a discrete GPU, like in gaming PCs. The way GPUs work gets very in-depth, so that's the idea to know. The motherboard connects all of the parts, like the CPU, RAM, storage, GPU, and it deals with I/O. I/O stands for input-output. Everything is connected using buses, which are just groups of wires that transmit data. The chipset is basically a translator between the CPU and the rest of the system. It is made of two parts, the north bridge and the south bridge. The CPU connects to the north bridge using the frontside bus, then the north bridge communicates with the RAM using the memory bus, and the GPU using the PCIe or, depending on the system, AGP bus. The south bridge handles lower speed communication like PCI devices, and it handles all I/O like USB, Universal Serial Bus, Ethernet, SATA, connection to storage disk. It also connects to the ROM, read-only memory, which is used to boot the computer. The north bridge and south bridge are connected using the internal bus. That explanation was a little in-depth at times, but if you can understand it, great. TLDR. Lots of wires and switches. Edit. This post did a lot better than I expected, and people seem to really like my explanation. I'm considering starting a YouTube channel where I explain computer stuff like this, and I was wondering if anyone would watch it. Edit 2. Here's a link to the channel I made quickly. I still don't really know what to name it. I'll post videos soon. https://www.youtube.com/channel/ucsbzvordqpws being 1LZK5FW. Traffic. You sit on the highway driving 3 miles per hour thinking, must be a wreck ahead, then you get clear of the traffic and there was never any clear reason or cause for the traffic. People change lanes and those in the new lane have to slow down to accommodate. Snowballs from there. It's a vicious cycle of tailgating and braking suddenly. Along with lane changes, as other comments said. I've noticed that when I leave huge gaps, drive slowly to avoid braking if possible, I can cruise at 10 miles per hour through traffic almost never stopping. If everyone did that, I think traffic would be greatly reduced. Regrettably, most people suck. I was really good at maths at school until year 10 when we hit a topic called numbers and proof. It was about proving that the answer to an equation was definitely right. I don't really know, because I never understood a single thing the teacher said that whole term. Same for me. I was perfectly fine with math up until calculus. And while I got the bits and pieces of calculus, I could not understand the big picture of it. Like if you guide me step by step I could do it, but doing a problem on a test and navigating it myself. None of it made any logical sense to me. It all seemed like arbitrary wacky nonsense to me. And I thought maybe I had a bad teacher or something, but, I had to take calc in college after that, and I did okay, but I think it was just because I had just repeated a course I had in high school. And any attempts to revisit it just made no sense. Edit. A lot of you are trying to explain calculus to me in terms that make calculus maddeningly incomprehensible. You're mostly proving my point. Quantum mechanics. That shit is whack. I was always great at math. Went to college and am a physics major. Motion of objects. Crush it. Relativity. Really interesting. Quantum mechanics. Okay, sure, so I just do the. Wait, so this equation represents the. That's not it. Okay, what about? No, wrong again. I am now a lawyer. Same. I don't even know what those two words mean together. That off vibe you get when you go to an empty parking lot or an IKEA. For those curious as to what I mean, check these subs out. R. The Night Feeling, R. Dead Malls, and R. True Backrooms. Liminal spaces https://the ludlow-group.com/2018/05/31/y-do-limit-spaces-field-like-and-altered-reality/amp/. I've heard places like that called negative spaces where time just seems off. I'm a physics teacher and I'm embarrassed to say that despite reading several explanations, I still don't understand how batteries work. Specifically, if one end of the battery basically houses excess electrons and the positive side has a dearth of electrons, why doesn't connecting two batteries but not in a closed circuit cause half of each battery to drain? I'm not a battery expert, but I'll take a stab. It's not true that one terminal of a battery has excess electrons, while the other terminal has a deficit of electrons. They are both charge neutral. Batteries have an anode and a cathode separated by an electrolyte. As the battery is discharged to power something, not only do electrons flow from the anode to the cathode through an external circuit, positively charged ions flow from the anode to the cathode through the electrolyte. The electrons and ions reunite at the cathode. It takes energy to charge up a battery, and we get energy out when it discharges, because the ions and electrons are more chemically stable at the cathode. In a lithium-ion battery, the kind I'm most familiar with, the anode is unusually graphite. The cathode is a lithium metal oxide. In the charged-up state, the lithium atoms are stored in the layers of graphite. They aren't very happy about that, and would prefer to go home to the lithium metal oxide at the cathode. When the anode and cathode are connected through an external circuit, lithium atoms are ionized. The electrons go through the circuit, and the lithium ions diffuse through the electrolyte, and they are reunited at the cathode. When you just connect two batteries together, positive to negative, nothing happens because the anode and the cathode are charge neutral. For electrons to be exchanged, there would have to be a channel for ions to be exchanged, too, and there's not. How that was not a headshot. Games rigged from the start. Shots 1 to 5. Clearly missed. Shots 6 to 9. Missed due to recoil, bad spray control. Shots 10 to 11. Very close, but recoil and inaccuracy make these reasonable misses. Shot 12. Likely didn't actually fire because you were already dead. Chemistry, I genuinely have no idea how atomic layers or molecule diagrams work, and no explanation I have ever had has helped. Please do not send me any explanations. Thank you. When people who are blind since birth talk about that they do not even see black. It's like nothingness. I mean, they also don't know what black is if they've been fully blind since birth. They have no benchmark of black to compare what they see to. The phrase, happy as a clam. How the fuck could you tell if a clam is happy? It's short for, happy as a clam at high tide. At high tide, clams have practically no predators and they emerge from their shells to feed and roller skate. That weird ringing randomly in my ear. Like a TV just turning on or something. Tinnitus, my friend. Highly motivated people. You know, the internal demon you have to fight to get something done. It's the opposite for over-motivated people. It's like when you're not completing tasks, you've ruined your day and it eats you up inside. I don't even understand moderately motivated people. Fucking magnets, how do they work? Ha, electrons go burr. Physics. I understand the basics, but when it starts getting more technical I get lost. Why I hate going to sleep and also hate waking up. Edit. I know people hate edits, but I didn't think this would murder my inbox, and I don't have time to reply to every single person. So, I'm not depressed. I used to be, for several years. But a few years ago I got better. Didn't just happen overnight obviously, but I'm not gonna go into detail about it here. I'm much happier now and enjoy life a lot more, but I still hate my sleep schedule. I keep trying to get it somewhat normal, but it keeps getting fucked up. Maybe anxiety is a part of it, but I doubt that is the sole reason. I don't hate change, for the most part. It depends on the change, but I don't think that applies here. I'm not a toddler, kinda wish I was though sometimes. I've tried using melatonin and other sleep aids, sometimes it works but not always. Doesn't matter how early I go to bed, I will lay in bed for 6 hours and not be able to go to sleep until 7 in the morning. I've had this problem for almost a couple decades now, and in multiple settings: when I was in high school, when I had a full-time job, and now that I'm going back to school and have a part-time job. I didn't know hating get in and out of showers was thing, but apparently it is. What a bunch of weirdos. Seriously though, I just think it's very nuanced and there are multiple factors that contribute to it. I'd like to have a sleep study done, but it's so difficult to find the time to do so right now. And to all my fellow sleep haters. Unite. Or not, we'd probably be a terrible team, being tired and sleeping at odd times and whatnot. I have the same problem. Hate getting in the shower and hate getting out. Edit. Top comment is no longer about shiny cat nuts. People who share unsolicited nudes. Why? What are you hoping to gain? What's the endgame? Like some poor hapless person is just gonna be like, hey nice cock bro, here's £1 million, or some shit. Just. Why? Exhibitionists get off on being seen. Or so I'm told. How so many fucking terrible commercials make it to TV? When I see a dumb commercial, my thought is always the same. A group of grown-ass people sat around a table somewhere and discussed how they want to promote their brand. They came up with an entire marketing strategy, probably had a vote about it, and sent approval onto the marketing department, company for production. That marketing department created, scripted, filmed, and produced that piece of shit commercial. Then they sent it back to the group of grown-ass people, who sat around the same table watching the shitty commercial before agreeing that it's sending the exact message they want about the brand. They likely then vote again to approve running it on TV. A huge budget is approved for putting that dumbass commercial out there, and the result is the piece of crap I just saw on TV. Yeah, I don't understand that. I work in an agency similar to the one you describe. We just did a rebrand and the guy in charge of creating our promotional video made absolute shit. But the problem is nobody could argue with him cause he's the director of design in our company and happens to be the CEO's best friend. So we ended up having to post this piece of ass video that those two thought were really good. It's just because they're so far up each other's asses, and their own, that they believe everything they make is gold. Or all those potato peelers that are made in any different way from the standard potato peeler that everybody has had since forever. How many engineers spent time designing that and making prototypes that went to QA and had a design review? Standard and certification for food-grade materials were poured over. Collections of mandatory documentation about production and materials were carefully collected and stored. A committee approved it, and it went to production engineers who was tasked to do the tooling, which probably resulted in design changes that went back and got more QA and final go-ahead. Samples were sent out to convention and consumer goods fairs. Salespeople stood in a booth and offered representatives from large retail chains quotes for 100k units over 12 months' time. Deals were struck, contracts signed. Money were put in escrow accounts. Designers made packaging and created logo types and sent brand names to be stamped in the production facility. Instruction and labels were translated to the local language by technical writers. Logistic people pored over shipping and made sure it had all the correct numbers and barcodes. Retail worked printed labels and stacked the shelves. Not once did anybody take the time to stop and say, "Hey, I actually tried to peel a potato with this and it didn't really work." Like at all.